So welcome to another board game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at New Cold War from VUCA Simulations. It is a brand new 4-player strategic
Area
game.
control, strategic area control card-driven game.
Yeah, it's a CDG, it's an area influence-y, control-y game. Think something like Twilight Struggle. Think something like, what was the one from Plague Island Games? A big old one.
I'm drawing a blank now.
I can't remember the name of it, but it was massive. It was a massive version.
2 hours to midnight, or 2 minutes to midnight? Yes.
I think that's the one.
That was a good game. We need to play that again.
So it's this kind of, it's a geopolitical game rather than a war game.
That is 100% what it is, geopolitical.
However, it's New Cold War, which is 1989 to 2019.
Yeah, the premise of the game is the wall has fallen, communism has failed, democracy is overcome. What happens then between 1989 and 2019, which is 5 years ago, but they picked that 30-year period to look at the rise of the...
kind of the super blocks that we have now.
The Chinese, the Russians versus the EU and the United States.
So this is a really cool dynamic game in the sense that you have, think Twilight Struggle 4-player. You're going to hear that. People are going to say that.
It's not really Twilight Struggle, but that was one of their motivations, or one of their inspirations.
But how does that work? Well, you have the US and the EU as a coalition, and then you have China and Russia loosely as a coalition as well.
Yep.
And what that really means is that whilst they might not be like, allied in that same way,
they are working together in some ways.
On like the world stage spectrum. So really that comes into play over on like the media influence track.
Yep.
What your public perception is, right?
Yep.
Is Western ideologies dominating the media, in which case they're denigrating, China and Russia? Or has like China and Russian influence kind of started to gain momentum, and that's what's being leaned toward. And that's the same thing for that prestige track up there as well. So you have a block in that way, or you might have a card that says, target the opposing coalition. So you can kind of pick and choose depending on which way the winds are blowing and who you want to kind of screw over in that way.
Well, and a lot of times it boils down to who is in the lead.
Oh, without question.
So if the United States is in the lead, China and Russia are probably going to hit them, because you can't let them get out too far, because it's really hard in game to.
But like all these games, it's a case of, okay, do I want to hurt you or do I want to help me, right? So there's those choices of, we could dog on the leader, but also if I bop you, who aren't in first place, out of this space, I can take that, and then I can get a bunch of points by getting all this cool stuff. So there's elements of that too.
And I actually think that's very interesting that you bring that up, because I found myself in my 2 plays, because I've played this twice. That was exactly what I was trying to do. About every other action I spent on myself to improve my social media or my prestige, or to take an area. The next one I typically would spend trying to hurt someone else or open up a spot by getting you out of there so that I could. So that was, I think that's the way I've approached the game. And I think that is a solid strategy for this game, you can't always bop the person in lead. Because you're not going to get where you need to be. If you're
constantly attacking other people, you will lose, because you won't get enough points.
Yeah.
And this is a big points game, by the way.
It is.
I think in our game at Buckeye Game Fest, you had like 190 points.
Yeah, it was like,
Like, it's a lot of points.
Yeah.
So,
it's not going to end up being 55 to 52 to 48
I think I ended the game with 90 points, and I came dead last.
Yeah,
like
as China.
You have to get a lot of points, and so just attacking everyone else isn't gaining you points. It's hurting them, but it's not gaining you points, and you will lose the way.
Well, and you don't have a lot of turns, right?
No, it's deceptive. It's deceptive.
Yeah, you get, is it 5 cards or 4 cards?
It's 4.
You get 4 cards, of which one of those you're going to have to trade with an ally.
Well,
that's later. You might be able to. So you're going to have 4 cards.
But one's like a headline card, and then you play 3 cards.
Basically. So you don't have a lot of you don't have a lot of ability to do a whole lot on the board. Now, the game does last, is it 9 turns?
It's 9 turns. You can play 3 cards a turn. You have 27 cards.
So you need to keep that in mind, 27 cards. You've got to be at certain spots because this is about scoring, just like you said. It's about victory points.
And continual scoring.
And it's about understanding when the certain aspects are going to score. Now, I'm reading this upside down, but there are 3 decades, first, second, and third, and different aspects are going to score at different times during those decades. So you have to be preparing for those or you're going to get left out in the cold. And I think that is, to me, really what the game is about. It's not about ending the game, it's about building the points and the ability for you to continue milling those points to ultimately come out ahead.
Yeah, and that it's one of those things.
Sense,
no, it does. I know exactly what you're saying. You also have like the strings, these threads of connected spaces that if you can get those,
that's such a huge
you
benefit.
get a one-time benefit, but it is only one time.
Yep.
So yeah, you might pick up 4 or 5 points from one of those.
Yeah.
But how much did you invest in that?
Yep.
That you maybe could have put somewhere else for dominance in a region that's going to score you again and again and again.
Yep.
And so you're constantly weighing up, how much am I putting out? Where am I putting out? Am I going it for immediacy or am I going it for long term? How much am I removing your stuff versus putting my stuff out?
Yep.
How important is that to me right now? And the thing I love the most about this game is the values of all of those points. Mm-hmm. Each of the different players has a different points value for every single continent, every single region, and every single one of these. I can't remember what these are called.
I think they're VP rewards is what they're called.
But what
I don't remember.
The strings, or whatever they're called.
Here, let me keep talking.
But like those help lend like historicity and theme to the game. Sub-regions, where you have, I as China, for example, I'm incentivized to go after Asia and Southeast Asia, and then to move into Africa and to move into South America. Because historically, that's what the areas in which they operated through the course of these 3 decades.
And that is reinforced. Like here I have an African sub-region tile. You can see China and Russia are going to score more points than the EU and the United States. So you need to understand that. You need to prioritize those. But how much time are you going to spend to get 6 or 8 or 10 points? You've got to be cognizant of the grand scheme. I actually think that's a genius.
6 points in a game where you're going to score 150.
That's not a lot.
Might not make a big difference.
But to me, I really think that's a great part of the design, that they did incorporate those type of elements into the overall game. Because let's face it, some events are going to allow you to pick that up pretty easy. You might have an event that allows you to put 3 or 4 on that track and gain that pretty quickly. If that's the case, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Score those 6 points. Do it. You got to hold it to the scoring round, though. That's the tough part.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
That's that classic CDG timing or game time where you're like, I want to do it as the very last thing
just
to
before
ensure that I do it and no one can take it away.
Yeah.
But I love that part of it. But then you also have the jeopardy of these objectives. At the beginning of the game, you draw 2 objectives, and later on in the game, you'll draw a 3rd one. But if before turn 8, I think it was...
And each of these are specific to the different factions.
Yes.
Like the U.S. has a set of, how many are there? 8. EU, China, and Russia all have their own, and I think they've tried to balance them.
And they're all very different.
And they are very different.
But this will be like control...
Asia and the Middle East.
Both of those. If you score both of those in a round,
17 points.
you get on top of the scores of all those things.
Yep.
And if you score both of your 2 objectives before, I think it's before like round
I want to say it's
8.
8 or 9.
Yeah, because you draw another one and I can't remember when. But before you draw that 3rd one, And so, I think it's before turn 9.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It is.
You could win up to... And so, if someone scores that 1, not only do they get a whole bunch of points, but now it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
What's their last objective?
Yep.
And they're like
Do they already
hammering
have
on
it?
this
Yep.
thing. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what the second part of their objective is, but it's at least this, or it might not be. And so you're desperately trying to like put out those little fires when it gets to the end game. I felt like this game had a good climax to it from that standpoint as well.
Well, and I also think the jeopardy of the auto win is a genius part of the design.
Yes.
Because, and I played twice, you've played once. I'm not sure I'm willing to go out on a limb and say whether it's balanced or not. We have a sneaking suspicion that China and Russia are a little underpowered. And their road is a lot longer to victory than the US and EU. I have seen that play out. Both games that I've played, the US has won. And won fairly handily. New players, not understanding the objectives, not understanding the scoring, I get that. But that is something that we had a struggle with as we played it.
So we played this at Buckeye Game Fest, and there was a lot of people playing this game.
I saw at least 3 other tables.
Yeah.
At least.
Because I think it's a very popular game. It's got a lot of merit to it.
It's beautiful.
I played as China, and it was a tough road to hoe. I felt very much behind the 8 ball. A lot of the game. You have a much smaller space in which to work.
Well, you can only work in these 2 areas, here
it just takes
and Asia.
So long to unlock the other areas.
What minimum turn to unlock some of the other areas?
So turn 5 for Africa.
Okay.
This one is only unlocked with card play. So was this one. Okay. So was this one, from which I got vetoed out of it by Russia. Thanks, Russia.
Yeah, your Russian ally was not a very good ally.
There's just some things that were happening that it's totally out of my control.
Well, and that, how hard did you push on the objectives?
My objectives were extremely difficult.
They were difficult.
I think I had Asia and South America.
So you had to control this one.
South America, I can't
get until
I can't do anything until
the event.
Until it was turn. No, it's all an event, and it just was not coming up.
And it's probably in the 2nd decade.
At which point it had already been carved up.
Sure.
And then I think the other one was Asia and 1 geo and at least 4 regions, and I was much closer to that one.
Okay, that's hard though.
It is, but it's actually not, because I had Asia, and it was I got a geo here, I had a geo here.
Yeah.
It was
and the geos are kind of the central points.
These parts here,
Pakistan is a geo.
But the problem was
Korea is
I couldn't get into the other areas until so late in the game. It was I'm not even close to some of this stuff. So that was a struggle for me in this game, and I want to play more of it.
Yeah, well, I would say this.
I
do think the objective cards kind of create a more even playing field.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The US and the EU could be running away with it. You can still win the game by doing 2.
Yes.
Now, that may be harder based on what cards you got and where you are, but at least there's that chance there. I already said it, I enjoyed the jeopardy of just when someone played 1, you're like, ooh, on pins and needles now, how close are they to their next one?
Yeah, and so everyone starts to dogpile.
Yeah.
And then that leaves a vacuum elsewhere. It just naturally has
It opens up opportunities.
There's just not as much.
Yeah.
You cannot physically do everything. A lot of the cards are 1, 2, 3 values at most. And so there's just it's not a game where you can do a whole smorgasbord of stuff.
Well, and I think that just like the other game we talked about and played at Buckeye Game Fest, Crusade and Revolution.
Yeah.
The values on the ops were not huge.
Very tight action points.
These are the same thing. It's a lot of 1s, a few 2s, 1 or 2 3s, and 1 or 2 4s. You don't have a ton.
I think it might be 1 4 for most.
Right. It's just not a lot. But the other thing I would point out from a strategic standpoint with you guys, because I was watching this, because I had already played. You guys, Russia and China, lost so many damn victory points from this prestige track. I think at several points you lost 5 and 4, and I think Russia was losing 4 and 3. That is hard to overcome. When I was gaining 8 and 9.
Yeah, and so that was the other kind of part of the game that I struggled with, because the only way to affect prestige was to
an event
increase your
which bumped it up.
your media presence.
Yep.
But the problem is that was just taking so long, and so many of
Sure.
the cards were like Tiananmen Square. You lose social media, you lose prestige.
100%.
No choice about it.
Yeah.
Or like the Uyghurs, like it happens again.
Yeah.
Like I was
Well,
just
but
getting dogged on by those things.
But keep in mind, the U.S. has so many of those negative events too. Right,
Sure,
9/11.
But they also start up here at
No,
like 2
you're
prestige
right.
at the game. I start at like
Yeah.
-1.
But
And there was some stuff like that I really struggled with
Sure.
the game that I want to see in a subsequent plays of like,
but
okay,
I think as
how
the
do we
U.S.
overcome that?
I think as the U.S. my compatriot, we invested in this quite a bit to keep bumping it up, which ultimately led to getting more prestige and getting more things.
I think in our game you guys didn't. You did it like once.
Oh, we did it 3 or 4 times.
We did it 3 or 4 times as
Yeah.
well, though, and so it was just
Okay.
it was just a net nothing.
I know I did 3 or 4 times.
It was just like staying still.
Got it.
There was less movement on that than I thought there was going to
Okay.
be. And every time you're doing that, you're just not doing
Yeah,
stuff
you're not
on the
doing
board.
something else. And
And,
you
it's
only
like
have
I don't
4
have very many
cards.
points.
No.
But I'm doing this to stop losing points, but I'm
Sure.
not gaining points.
I know.
There
But
was a
isn't
little bit
losing points
no.
more important to avoid than
I lost this
gaining?
game by 100 points. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But
that
over
mattered.
9 turns, you had negatives on almost every
I have
one of those.
so I lost 15 points.
You lost more than that.
I didn't because this only scores 3 times in the game.
Okay, sure.
And so, this is what I talk about when I struggle with China because they just, and everyone's like, oh, they get really powerful in the late game.
I didn't see it.
Boy, I
either.
looked through those cards.
They're not great.
They have one good card.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
there was some, and I had heard a similar thing from the table across from us who had the same thing.
maybe we're just really good at games, and
I don't know.
or maybe we're
What
really
it is
bad.
this was our first play. It was
Yeah.
my first play at least.
Yeah,
I
I
want
played
to
one
go
other time.
again. I
Yep.
want to see it again. I want to try it again and like do that because
Yeah.
mechanically what we're doing, real interesting, a lot of
Yep.
cool stuff going on. But there was some elements of it that were like,
Sure.
I just felt like I did as good as I could and really couldn't overcome
Right.
this game state. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
A couple of the things that I liked that were really different than Twilight Struggle. The coups were totally different.
Oh, yeah, no.
You don't roll a die.
It's much more streamlined.
It's streamlined.
Yes.
You literally use your ops and you use one of your several coups that you've got and you can just remove them, right?
Yeah, and it's the action of removing someone
And
and then putting a guy.
So
that's considered a coup.
Yeah.
Which the rules were not good.
They were not.
We had a few arguments
They
about
needed to
that.
be clear. But remember in Twilight Struggle, you're rolling dice.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing.
Yeah, I liked the streamlined nature of the coups. I very much enjoyed that. The other thing I liked was bolstering. What was that called? Where I put the little cylinders.
Stabilization. and
Stabilization.
destabilization.
Destabilization and stabilization, I very much enjoyed. I used that to my advantage so many times where I would go to a geo over here and I would put a stabilization marker. And that made it harder for you and Russ to take those away. Not impossible, right? But remember,
That basically makes it impossible with
these
the
op
balance of the
values
cards.
are not huge. So I loved that.
What I liked was the saving the one ops.
Oh,
to
100%.
then, because it made those things available to you.
Yeah, it
I've
made like
saved
a 2
one,
become a
I've got
3.
a 2 and I've got
Yeah.
a 3. I can do something.
I think there were a lot of really great mechanics that were improvements upon Twilight Struggle that made it for a different experience, yet still retained a lot of that meaty decision
Yeah,
and
well-
importance of card play.
It's like imagine if you made a 4-player Twilight Struggle. It would either be twice as long or
Sure.
you would do half as much stuff.
Right.
Neither of those things are good.
No.
Whereas what they've done here is that they've done it successfully, and you do that by, you have less stuff. You do less stuff. There's less cards.
Yep.
But they streamlined what you do so that the actions that you're taking
Are easier
are
to-
more impactful,
Yeah.
but they're quicker as well.
Yeah, this is a 2.5 to 3 hour game, whereas I think Twilight Struggle is 3 to 3.5.
Yeah.
I think it's about an hour shorter.
And
in my
Twilight
opinion.
Struggle almost never goes through the end game anyway.
We get it to go to the end game a lot. I feel like when you and I play, we're always in.
But it almost always ends that first hand of the late game.
It can.
It
can.
so rarely goes to that second or third hand of
Sure.
the late game. The game's always done by that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
And so, whereas this one, you're going to go, unless someone has the auto victory, which is possible.
Very possible,
It's difficult, but it's possible.
but it's very possible.
But they're going to be doing that in turn 7 or 8, which is,
Yeah,
that's the
about
end
the
game
same,
anyway,
yeah.
right?
But I will say this. I did very much enjoy the game. I did play the United States both times, so I feel like I got the best of it. Maybe, potentially. I need to play Russia or China next to get the opposite side of the experience.
Yeah.
So I look forward to playing this again.
Oh, absolutely.
I think there's a great game here. And I would say this, in VUCA simulations fashion, this is one of the best produced games I've ever seen.
All these little wooden pieces, and they
Embossed.
are like embossed, they're like screen printed, no
Yep.
stickers, no nothing like that. The cards are very readable.
Well, I think they're clear, they're simple, the iconography is well done. My one complaint production-wise is they used salmony red and an orangey red.
Yes.
And when you put those things on the board,
It's and then
it's very hard to distinguish.
they've got blue and slightly less dark blue for
With
the
a
pieces
blue background with the continents and with the spaces themselves.
and the board.
Yeah,
so
that-
like
that should have been
the
different.
color palette choice was a tough one. I
Yeah.
didn't love that. I understand they were like going for this like aesthetic they've got going on,
I get it, but
but I would like to have seen
Yeah.
like not that.
I would agree. So those were probably the strategy and the balance is a concern, but I think that's gonna bear itself out in
Yeah,
a couple plays.
But the playing of the game warrants more plays of it.
100%.
Whereas we've played games that we can sniff out a skewed game, people. We've
Well,
played
yeah.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
People complain about that, but
Well, when you've played as many games as we have, we kind of
you can smell when it's not good,
Yeah.
when it's like imbalanced. And this one, it's like, okay, I didn't like that,
Yeah.
but the playing of the game was so enjoyable that
Yep.
it's worth investing more plays into it to
Yeah.
either rectify that or to ensure or to figure out, oh, it is the case, in which case
Sure.
there's a caveat.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I hope that we can get that sorted because I really, really liked mechanically the things that were going on, and I liked the player interaction.
Yeah.
Yes, I liked all of that. I just want to ensure that like the play experience is
Sure.
as good for each of the players at the table, and you don't have
Yeah.
the one player where like, hey, sorry, you're playing the crappy faction. Sorry.
Sure. Well, and is it going to be one of those things where, you know, this plays 1 to 4. It has a solo bot, but you could play it 2-player where,
You could.
right, but if you play it 2-player,
Does it say? Well, it says 1 to 4.
yeah, 1 to 4, you can play Russia and China.
Do you just play both sides?
I'm not
Or
sure.
do you just
I'm
like
just not.
leave one side
I'm
out?
not sure.
That
I-
would be interesting if you just like don't play one of the
Sure.
factions.
I didn't read through those very clearly.
You
but-
don't do that. Play it 4-player.
Well, yeah, it's a 4-player game. Play it 4-player.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. But yeah, this is new Cold War from VUCA. There's more to come from this game from
Yeah.
us, for sure.
Yeah.
We're going to probably take this to WBC and sit down and play this again.
Yep.
And I want to be able to give it like 2 big old thumbs up,
Sure.
because I think right now it's 1 thumbs up.
Sure.
And that's purely the
Well, the balance is the one thing that we're concerned
balancey
about.
part about, because I can get over the production stuff where like
Sure.
they're very similar colors, and like I'm putting an orange piece on an orange board next to your slightly less orange piece on the orange board. I don't love that,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I can
it's
get over that.
Salmon and orange red.
Or like
But-
once you've got all the pieces out and you've got a bunch of destabilization,
Yeah.
it's really hard to see the connections and then the names of everything. You're
I
like,
would agree with that.
Oh, this one's like Cambodia. I know where Cambodia is, but the label touches 2 other countries.
Yeah.
And so you're
Yeah.
like, okay, is
It's
it
hard to
this
tell.
stack? I
Yeah.
can't remember.
I would agree with
Like,
that.
there's stuff like that. I can get over that.
Yeah.
I can get over that if the game is as good as I want it to be.
I felt like one of the comments we did make during the play with the production was I felt like the board needed to be about 25% bigger.
Yeah, which is tough because there's a lot
I
of
know,
pieces already.
But this is too big. It's just too big. This could have been a separate board that you put out, I think.
Well,
Then you could have blown up
You
this.
didn't even need these.
Well,
You
agree.
You have a little, because you have a player board,
Yep.
right? You just have the word event,
Yeah,
or you have the
and you-
ops points, and
Agreed.
you just put them down here.
So this could have been removed. These could have been blown up. And I think the problem of those spaces being too close would have been solved.
Yeah.
But those were some of our quibbles. I think we've also shared some of the things that we very much liked.
Yes.
I actually really liked the negative events. They really hurt, but I like that there are cards like that in the game.
Yeah.
The other thing I very much enjoyed was the catch-up mechanic. Where is that? Here, here, and here. So in turn 3, 6, and 9, the two people who are trailing are able to look through the discards and pull a card out.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
I thought that was genius. I saw you guys, Russia particularly, kept getting that same damn event out that I can't remember.
But it's that classic. To me, that reminds me a lot of 13 Days.
Sure.
Where the cards that you discard can come back to bite you.
And me discarding that card for you came back to bite me a couple times.
It keeps the
with
event
Russia.
out of your hands for
Temporarily.
now.
Yeah. So lots of interesting things here. It really is a solid game. I think our only major concern, some with productions, rules weren't totally 100% clear at times.
Which was tough.
Yeah, and then
It didn't need to be like that.
is the balance really there? But
Yeah, I would like, if you've played this, I would
Let
like
us
to
know.
hear what's the China experience. Because, again, people are like, oh, China gets real powerful at the end of the game.
give me your China
Maybe I'm
cards.
real bad at this game, but
Well,
they
it's-
don't.
It's very possible.
I think this is.
Yeah, those are China. I've got them all divided up. And we didn't play my copy. We played,
Yes, because they're not supposed to be divided.
yeah,
But
Colin's
it
copy.
was like, you get a couple of big events in the last
I'm just
decade, but
going to
I
the-
was 100 points behind. What am I going to do with 4 ops points from Xi Jinping? I'm not going to get 100
Well,
points.
and my other concern here is, like, that's South America unlocking South America, right? Isn't that what that is?
Yeah, that unlocks South America. Cool.
But that's the last turn. You're not going to have time to do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
And this is already, all of these are all gone, and everyone's already carved
yeah,
this all up.
yeah,
I have
that
to-
was a concern.
I have, maybe 8 cards
An
to
MEA.
remove everyone and get myself in there.
What is
it's
this?
not possible.
What is this?
That's the Middle East. That's
Okay,
the one
sorry.
That's the one I got vetoed out of.
Right.
Thanks, Russia.
I don't know. These showing up at the end, I remember when you played them, I thought, boy, that's too late.
It's very late.
Anyway.
Because then you've got your little 1 and 2 ops cards to.
And you
I remove
don't-
your guy.
You
Cool,
don't
I put him
have
back.
enough
I remove your guy.
chance
I put him
yeah.
back.
To me, one of the beautiful things about geopolitical games is you can invest in areas over the entire stretch of the game, never reaping anything until the very end. Here, you can't. If it's not unlocked, you can't invest.
Yeah,
in
like
it.
what
That's
I wish
interesting.
is that, okay, can I have a little pool that I can be setting money aside for, so when
Sure.
it unlocks, I get like
Some
I
benefit.
get like 2 or 3 guys of the benefit, or like I
Yeah.
get some.
To be able to make up some ground.
Yeah, I've been making.
You've been out of there for 30
I've
years.
been making diplomatic
20 years.
overtures, and
Yeah.
now I finally front the money. Cool, it shows up on the board. I
Yeah.
don't know, something like
That's
that.
an
'Cause
interesting
it
concept.
felt like I just didn't have enough time
Sure.
to do anything meaningful once they unlocked.
I think overall, though, we did enjoy the game. I think everybody
Yeah.
at the table
I settled
enjoyed the
that-
game.
I still had a good time playing the game.
Everybody enjoyed the game. Everybody enjoyed the experience. I think everybody at the table is looking forward to the next time that we get to play it.
Yes.
So keep that in mind. I think we're just trying to ask some hard questions. Maybe Andoni and
But we're going to answer
Igor
those
will-
hard questions.
Yeah,
as
hopefully
well.
with some more plays. Anyway,
Yes.
I had a great time with this game. And this is our first impressions
Yeah,
kind of video.
yeah,
I'm not
they'll-
sure we said that at the beginning.
Well,
but
no, but there'll be more to come from this, because from
Yeah.
how fun it was,
gonna
this
play
is a
again.
game worth investing that time
Agreed.
in, so that we can kind of come to terms with any qualms we
We
might
do
have.
say that a lot. The more you have to put into a game, the more benefits going to come out the other end.
Yes, but some games don't.
Aren't worthy of
Some
that.
games aren't worthy of that, and some games up front you're like amazing.
Yeah,
And this one was like, okay, mechanically real cool.
yeah. Balance was the concern.
But let's
Yeah.
get there. Let's get
Yeah.
it there.
Yep, agreed.
But it's a game that's worth getting there because the playing of it is really enjoyable.
Well, and I also loved, because I was born in 1973, right? So this starts in 89. I was a teenager.
Well, and I was born in '88, right at
Yeah.
the beginning of this game. So half of this stuff I grew up watching on TV when I was a very
And I
young
think
child.
that's my point. Half of this stuff I've lived through, right? I've seen the events. I've read the results. I've seen what's happened. Cold War, I wasn't really there.
Yeah.
Twilight Struggle hits
5-year plan. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't really. So anyway, I think that's why I am drawn to this game because of that fact that
No,
I grew up
absolutely.
during this 30-year.
I recognize so much of the stuff on all these
100%.
cards, right?
It's like Labyrinth. When we play
Yeah,
Labyrinth,
it's identical in that way.
I know those events.
Yeah.
I know those folks. I know who they are. This is the same thing, and it's similar. So
And yeah, like you say, that's a huge draw,
It
right?
is.
It's having that additional layer of connection to a game like this makes it that much more enjoyable.
Yep, agreed.
So, New Cold War from VUCA Simulations. Let us know what you think. There's more from this to come on the channel, but appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from PlayersAid.com.
And I'm Grant.